We're on the air.
Beautiful. Well, hey guys, it's Rob here, coming from beautiful Boise, Idaho hotel room. But I absolutely was very excited, and this was the only time that we could have Michael on. So, Michael, thank you so much for doing this live training to my audience.
Oh, you're welcome. My
You
pleasure.
know, most of you already know Michael's a New York Times best-selling author. We were just joking about the first world problems that Michael has as a speaker, being offered tens of thousands of dollars to travel the world speaking. And we certainly hope that we can provide that problem for you. But when you get that problem, then you have to know what to say and how to steal the show. By the way, I didn't mention this to you, but I love Steal the Show. What a phenomenal book. I know that it was pretty acclaimed, but that's kind of your passion, the speaking thing. And oh my gosh, if anyone doesn't have it, they should. But of course, you're going to share some of those things today. And so, this is not formal, but I just want to say thank you again. And I look forward to you teaching my group. Oh, by the way, I know you're going to talk about the event coming up in Fort Lauderdale that is going to be the multi-day event on February 15th. Just so my audience knows, I am excited about it because I'm going to be there. We're sponsoring the event as well, and very, very excited to spend some time with you in person. And so if anybody joins, I know you're going to share some things about that at the end, then I look forward to meeting them face-to-face as well. So it's going to be really fun, beautiful time to go to Fort Lauderdale in February, certainly. So I look forward to seeing you there, my friend.
Yeah, me too. And we're just so honored to have you sponsoring the event. And people should know that if they hang around till the end, I'm going to share a link that will give a $500 discount to the event that will be just for your students. So it's a private link that they'll have access to. It's really great. We've been talking about trying to figure out ways to do things with each other since we met in LA maybe a year and a half ago or so.
Yep.
Because, heroic public speaking, we focus on the performance. When you get a gig, what the heck do you do so that you steal the show?
Right.
And, public speaking can be anxiety provoking, even for people who want to do it. And of course, if you want to get booked to speak, you generally need to have a book that people want to read. And if you want to get people to read a book that you've written, you generally need to speak. So they are two initiatives that really do go hand in hand. So the people that I serve need the kind of work that you do, and the people that you serve need the kind of work that I do. So I'm glad that we're starting off this relationship with you coming as a sponsor for Heroic Public Speaking Live in February. So I'm thankful, and I have a lot of gratitude, and I'm honored to be here to talk to your folks. I never take it for granted. I think that we've got to continue to earn the attention that we get, and I'm not entitled to it. So I'm going to do my best to be of service to your audience today. Thank
you, my friend. I love your authenticity, and I know that comes from your heart. And man, I just can't wait to see you face to face, and of course, what you're going to share today. So cool. Take it away, my friend.
Okay. So I'm actually going to take out these headphones since I'm going to be speaking and I won't need to hear, and I'll put them back in. I'll just do this. I'll take them out for now. And I want to give you a heads up that on the page that you went to watch the Google Hangout, you can certainly put in comments. And I see Steve and Helen and Charlie and Paul, Judith, Amy have already done that. So feel free to do that throughout. I will take a few questions at the end. I'm going to go through at a solid pace, 30 tips that I don't think you can afford to ignore if you want to wow your audience, win praise, and even profits. So you don't actually have to take notes if you don't want to, because at heroicpublicspeaking.com, you can opt in there for a few videos, but also you can get the world-saving guide to giving great speeches, and it will have 50 tips And I'm going to go through 30 of them today. So you'll be able to get a copy of that so that if you want to refer back to it, you can have it there. So there's nothing to worry if your pen doesn't keep up with my mouth. But I want to get in these 30 for you today in 60 minutes and still have time to answer a few questions from you. You'll notice also that I look up in front of me. So I'm at the camera looking at you, and then I'll look up in front of me and then you. And I'm doing that because I have them written out on the whiteboard on the wall. Actually, the whole wall is a whiteboard. And otherwise, there's no real need to memorize the order of 30 tips for you. So I'll just look up here. And for example, number 1 is that everything starts with the bio. And I'm going to introduce that concept. Then I'll go on to number 2. And at the end, as we mentioned, I'll introduce you to Heroic Public Speaking Live in February 15, 16, 17. And if it's something that you're interested in, then you'll come and you'll spend some time with me there, and my team and all my teachers and some of the best public speakers in the world are coming to teach. And then, of course, Rob is going to be there as well. So more on that is heroicpublicspeaking.com/live, L-I-V-E, heroicpublicspeaking.com/live. And then at the end, I'll give you a link that you can use to get $500 off. So do not buy at the main page because you'll pay more there. Okay. So I said it starts with the bio. That's number 1. Often people think a speech starts when they start talking, or they think a speech starts when they say, okay, so let's begin. But a speech really starts when your bio is read. Now, I didn't ask Rob to go through an extensive bio for me. I didn't ask him to do it in the way that I would require an organizer of a large event to do, for 2 reasons. 1, because many of you already know who I am. Number 2, if you don't, you trust Rob, and you know Rob is bringing somebody on who knows what he's doing. And number 3, Rob was able to give you a few of the important details that helps demonstrate that I have the experience that you need in order to teach you this particular material. And then throughout this conversation, I may drop in other things about my background that will also continue to demonstrate credibility in this particular field. So remember that your speech starts as soon as your bio is read. And it's not just when you walk up on stage. So make sure the bio can demonstrate to people that you know what the audience needs to know. So they will extend that credibility to you quickly and not wait 15 minutes and sort of go like this and then decide if they find you credible. They're always going to have a critical eye at the beginning. That's what audiences do. They do judge a little more harshly at the beginning than they do once they trust you, natural, but nonetheless, you can help with that. Number 2, you actually don't need to tell them what you're going to tell them and then tell them and then tell them what you told them. So for example, I told you we're going to do 30 tips, but I didn't tell you all 30 tips. It wouldn't make sense to do that. I'm going to tell you the 30 tips throughout the presentation. You're not going to know what's coming or how I'm going to do it. And then at the end, I'm not going to repeat all 30 tips because that would take quite some time. Think about it this way. Now, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. You can do it. You can say, here's what we're going to talk about. Then you outline the whole thing and then you talk about it. Then that's not a bad thing. And there are some presentations where that is very, very helpful, but it's not required. And the reason that I address these issues of what's right and what's wrong is because there really isn't a right and wrong. This is art. It's a creative endeavor. So if we find that using that particular framework is very effective for a particular speech that you're giving, then we use it. But we are not married to it. We're not constrained or confined by it. Important to remember that we can make choices that are different than other people make if we are able to deliver on our promise to the audience and affect the change that we want to achieve our goals. So there is no one right way to do anything when it is a creative pursuit. Okay, so that's number 2. Number 3, cut. Generally, when you're giving speeches, you can't put as much into that speech as you think you can. So if you have an hour for a keynote, you often need less content than you might think. In fact, audiences can only consume a certain amount. So I'll give you 30 tips, which is a lot, but they're all clear, concise, quick tips. So number 1 starts with the bio. You can remember that, no problem. I got to put more emphasis on the bio and understand that that's where the speech starts. Number two, now I know I don't have to tell them what I'm going to tell them. Sometimes it's actually quite interesting for them not to know, and they're excited, just like you watch a movie trailer and the movie trailer ruins the whole movie for you because you know what's coming. And now number three, cutting is very, very helpful. You want to get rid of things that are not necessary and make sure that everything you're sharing is specific to the promise that you're making. And my promise to you is that I'll make you a better speaker. It's 100% guaranteed. I can't promise that I can turn you into Martin Luther King or Winston Churchill. I am no Martin Luther King, but I know that you can be better than you are today. And I think you know that you can be better than you are today, even if you already feel you're quite capable. So know that that's my promise, and these tips will help deliver on that. It'll be the beginning of a relationship about me delivering on that promise to you. Number four, the entire story serves the end. So if you tell a story, and of course, storytelling is an excellent device for making connection and illustrating concepts, but everything in that story needs to serve the end of that story. So if you're telling a story, for example, about the time you fell through the ice into the freezing cold water in a pond, well, everything that you ate for breakfast that day may not be relevant to that particular resolution in that story, unless, of course, you threw it all up after you fell in because your body had this reaction to the cold. Not the most beautiful visual in the world, but remember that anytime you tell a story, what is in that story needs to be relevant to the resolution. So it needs to serve that end result. Number five, when you introduce a topic, either in the very beginning or in the beginning, the first quarter, you want to make sure that you can demonstrate and then continue to demonstrate that you know what the world looks like to the people that you serve, that you know what the world looks like to the people you serve. Because if they don't feel that you get them, then they will often distance themselves from you. Because think about this. If you're asking somebody to do something different or to think differently or to feel differently, it may be confronting for them. If I ask you to see yourself as a performer and not just a subject matter expert, but somebody who actually can perform in front of others, you may say, I don't buy it. I don't buy it. It's too much. I don't think that's me. Because it's confronting to you. It's confronting maybe that to go out in front of audiences and reveal yourself, to take risks, to be open. Because of course, the possibility for criticism is significant anytime you get up in front of other people. So that may be confronting to you. And if you say, well, Michael was a professional actor, he was on Sex and the City, Third Watch, All My Children, Law and Order, he did movies and hundreds of voiceovers. I even recognize him from the 1-800-ATT commercials, Braun, Pizza Hut, MTV, Coors Beer. That guy is not only a natural performer, he's a trained professional with a master's of fine arts from the graduate acting program at NYU. I'm not like him. I'm not going to be able to do that. I'm not going to be able to perform the way he performs. I would never expect anyone to perform the way I perform or like anybody else. You may be a more compelling and more connected performer than me. So we're not making comparisons. Each one of us is an individual. And we work with you as an individual to make sure that the most compelling parts of you are what are demonstrated in your style, not like somebody else. And if you're asking people to make this change, since it can be confronting, they may distance themselves from you if they feel like you don't understand them. So our job is to demonstrate that we understand the way the world looks like. Like, I know that public speaking can be scary. I know that you don't know how to rehearse. How would you know how to rehearse? It's not something you were taught in school. I know it because I was a professional actor. So I can teach it to you, but I wouldn't expect you to know how to do it. I wouldn't expect you to know how to write scripts for speeches. You weren't taught how to do that in school. I wouldn't expect you to know how to move on stage. All of these things that are anxiety provoking, there's really no reason that you should know how to do it. But there are skills that you can develop if you learn from a professional who has those skills and is trained in those skills and understands how to teach them. That's very important as well. Number 6, it's important to show them what the world will look like if they do not change. So that if they do not adopt your big idea, if they do not follow through on the promise of the presentation, that's very important. Hold on, let me just check something. Okay. So when we're introducing the concept, since it may be confronting, even if they feel that you understand them, they still may say, I don't know if I want to really engage in that, because it's going to take a lot of work, and maybe it's not worth it. Maybe the amount of work I need to do to really be a wonderful performer and give a great speech is a lot, and maybe I don't want to do all that work. So they'll pass. But if they see the consequences of not doing that work, not making that change, not seeing the world in a different way, then they may wake up and go, you know what, I better do something about this. Because, for example, if you write a book and someone asks you to give a speech in front of an audience and you bomb, you're not selling any books, you're not booking any business, you're not getting asked to speak again. In fact, you may not get gigs again because the word will spread that you bombed. Well, that's not a good thing. So those are some of the consequences of not adopting this idea. And when you recognize some of the consequences, you might go, you know what, I'm going to do something about this. It may take some work, may have to make some investment, but I'm willing, because I don't want those consequences. I don't want the feeling of being rejected by audiences, because that is not a feeling anybody wants. I don't want it. You don't want it. I've never met anybody who wants to be rejected. So we need to make sure that we show them what the world looks like if they don't change. Number 7, this is pretty straightforward, pretty simple, but unless you practice it, it may be hard to break this habit. So there's nothing wrong with using your finger like this if you want to, or even going like this if you want to. However, if you have a habit of going like this, pointing at your audience a lot and sort of shaking your finger at them, it can start to be patronizing or aggressive, dismissive, and we don't want that. So one of the things I suggest you do when you are in front of people is to use an open palm. Let me see. I'll put my camera back on, make sure you can see this. Yeah, so your palm is up. So if you're talking to them, you're expressing yourself in this way. And then if you're referring to yourself, you express yourself in this way rather than you. And of course, if you do it this way, it looks like a gun, and that's not a very good image to be pointing at somebody. So think palm up instead of pointing as a general way of being. And then if you're pointing, there's a specific reason. Like I say, number 1, that's a reason. I'm using this as a 1. Number 2, or if I say, you know what I mean? Do you know, like I'm doing it as a specific point, a reason I'm making a choice. As a performer, everything we do, everything we say, the way we move, it says something about who we are and how we relate to our audience. And so the more experience we get, the more intentional we get. We know why we're doing what we're doing. And we realize that when we're presenting, we're making choices the entire time. So it's better to make choices intentionally than not have control over the choices you're making. That's not a very powerful feeling. Number 8, in order to get people to say yes, we need to affect them intellectually, emotionally, and physically. So we want to get them engaged physically when we're in front of them. We want them to think and to be interested, and we want them to feel. So we always make sure that those components are present in any presentation we give. Number 9, if you say if you outline some content, if you say you're going to deliver some content, you need to deliver the content. So if you say, I'm going to teach you 6 things about X, and you get to 3 and then move on to something else, you have dropped the ball and your audience feels left wanting. Every once in a while, it may happen that you forget to introduce something that you were going to introduce. Audiences are not going to kill you for that. They even might remind you and help you and go, oh yeah, I forgot. Thank you. And you tell them, but if you say you're going to unpack something, you really need to. So I would generally stay away from giving the speech where you say, Okay, there are 8 things you need to know. I'm going to teach you 2, or you do 2 of them. And by the end you go, shoot, didn't have time for the other ones, but I've got a product in the back that if you buy, it's not like that. You want to give them everything you can in the time you have, and give them everything you say you're going to give them. And then of course there's always more, and you can introduce that when the time is right. Number 10, if you can, use props. Use props to illustrate a concept. For example, I saw a TED Talk where a gentleman was talking about the environmental impact of oil. And he wanted to demonstrate how much oil is used to make one Big Mac. So instead of just describing it, like I'm going to do for you now, he actually showed it. So he took a Big Mac and he put it on the table and he opened it up so you could see the Big Mac. Then he put a glass, an empty glass, next to the Big Mac, and he took out a big pitcher of oil. And he filled up the glass with the oil. And he said, I'm going to show you how much oil is in a Big Mac. So then he fills it up. He goes, nope, not that much. Takes out another glass, fills that up. Nope, not that much. Takes out another glass, fills that up. Nope, not that much. Takes out another glass, fills that up halfway, puts it down and goes, that's how much oil it takes to make one Big Mac. And the audience was mesmerized because they saw it in front of them. So clearly right now, I'm not going to bring out a whole thing of oil because that's not my demonstration. I'm not teaching you about the oil. I'm introducing you to what somebody else did. I suppose next time, maybe I should get some oil. I got to get some, maybe diesel. Diesel would be safer than gasoline, certainly, which isn't oil, but I don't want too many flammable items in the house. Number 11, contrast and extremes. Contrast and extremes. People like extremes. They like contrasts. Performers are interesting when they offer things that are different. So for example, if the entire time I gave this presentation in this particular vocal range, using this particular vocal pattern without any movement whatsoever, you would probably want to kill me. You'd be like, I can't take it. Even if I had the greatest things in the world to say, you'd be like, I can't listen to this. It's too much. So vocal variance is important. Variance in tone, pitch, pace, rhythm. And there are multiple kinds of contrast. There's delivery contrast, which includes the vocal contrast. It also includes slides versus video versus audio, interacting with the audience, being on stage, standing up, sitting down, having people interact with each other. There's so many different things you can do to deliver your content that creates contrast that's very engaging to people. There's emotional contrast, high highs, low lows, intensity, lightness. You're trying to bring people on a roller coaster ride. Then there's, of course, content contrast. So your content is delivered using lots of different frameworks throughout, so that there is stories, there are how-to action items, there are problem solution groups, there are compare and contrast sections, and more. And so they're constantly on the edge of their seat, not knowing what's going to come next, and it's exciting to them. Number 12, moving forward. When you are delivering information, you want to keep moving forward. It's very different than sitting back on your heels. And I mean that both physically and metaphorically. If you're back on your heels, your energy is going backwards. If you're forward, you're driving forward. So when you're telling a story, the story drives forward. You keep the energy here, it moves forward, it moves forward, it moves forward, it moves forward, and it gets to the resolution. And you'll have peaks and valleys, and there's all different rhythms that you'll find in there, but generally, what's exciting for people to listen to is something that is moving forward without a constant drop in energy. So if each time I finish something and then I kind of just went, there'd be this drop in energy. Then I have to pick it back up. Now, that doesn't mean everything goes like that, but there's this intensity that you want to find that moves you forward. Whether you have a big personality or you're quiet, doesn't matter. It's still this intensity that keeps moving forward, driving forward, moving forward to the resolution of a story, to the punchline of a joke, whatever it is you're trying to teach. it keeps building. Number 13, audiences like to think events are spontaneous. So, they want to feel like the things that are happening in front of them are happening for the first time, even if you've given that speech 100 times. And even if they know you've given that speech 100 times, they still like the feeling of giving that speech as if they're hearing that speech for the very first time. And that requires rehearsal. And that requires a significant amount of rehearsal. Interestingly enough, people often feel that if they rehearse, then they're going to be stiff and will seem less authentic and less spontaneous. The fact of the matter is, often the opposite is true. But I do understand it. I get it. I get it because sometimes what happens is you do some rehearsal, but you do a little bit of rehearsal. And then as a result, when you're performing, you're not being in the moment. You're not connected to the audience right now. You're thinking about what you did in rehearsal, trying to recall that and repeat it. But you don't know it well enough to recall it easily and quickly and spontaneously. So then what happens is you're stiff. You're not in the moment. And you look constrained because you're nervous that if you allow yourself to improvise, to go off even on a different track and then try to come back, you won't get back because you don't know your material well enough. So you stay very constrained. But if you're well rehearsed and if you know your material very well, then you can throw away the script if you want to. And there are different ways to work on the material. Memorizing, not memorizing, not one is not better than the other. There's just different approaches for different people depending on different kinds of material and types of speeches they're giving. But nonetheless, either way, whether it's an outline type speech or a memorized, written out word for word speech, you want to know it so well that you can forget about it. And then in the moment, it comes to you organically. That's what the actor does. That's what the great speaker does, because you're probably not going to have a teleprompter in front of you. So you need to know that material very, very well. Number 14, stand and land. Stand and land. Sometimes a speaking coach will tell folks to slow down because they think they talk quickly, and they may. And that may be good advice from time to time. Generally, what we're looking for is we're not asking you to slow down. We're generally asking you to pause more. Now, each person is going to be different, but many people talk quickly and you can understand them. In fact, you'd rather them talk quickly than talk really slowly, because if they talk really, again, just like before with the monotone, it can be problematic. So the pace is actually what gets people to pay attention. But if you're trying to get them to connect with an idea or to learn something, or you want something to land emotionally, they need some space. They need some silence. And so what you do is you're able to create lots of pattern interrupts, and you're also able to create more connection in that silence. And most importantly, you give the audience time to consume what you said. Because your ideas are only as good as your ability to get people to consume them, to absorb them. And then, of course, when we make a transition, now we can go back to a quicker pace, more lively pace, sprightly pace, because we're making transitions into something else. And then when we get to our point, we land our point. So we stand and land. Now, when you're standing and landing, you might be speaking and then pausing, but you don't have to stay in one place all the time. Sometimes you'll hear a speaking coach say, you can't walk and talk at the same time. You should only speak when you're still. And then you move somewhere and start speaking again. What happens, unfortunately, is it looks very artificial. It doesn't mean that you can't walk across the stage without speaking. Of course, as a choice for a specific situation to make a specific point, absolutely. But as a general rule, I wouldn't apply it. because you want to seem authentic and natural and like a human being on stage, and people walk and talk at the same time very often. I did it today a few times. And when you're moving on stage, you can be speaking a lot as long as you're not pacing back and forth. That's something else altogether. But if it's a big deal, if it's something really important, you want to make sure you can stand and land so the audience absorbs that and there isn't a lot of movement or action happening while they're trying to absorb it. Number 15. Oh, actually, that was number 15, move and talk at the same time. So I put 14 and 15 together. So 14 was stand and land, 15, move and talk at the same time. Here's 15.5. People are okay with you making little mistakes like that. Perfection is not what we're going for. We will never be perfect as creative artists. As writers, your book will never be perfect. As a speaker, your speech will never be perfect. Doing a live stream like this will never be perfect. And if we expect it to be perfect, if we try to make it perfect, we often produce a huge amount of anxiety for ourselves and often are very disappointed in ourselves, and we don't enjoy the experience. And if we don't enjoy the experience, we're probably not going to have a lot of, we're probably not going to do a great job, because we need to have fun to do these things while we're doing them. If it's a chore, if it's horrible, if we dread doing it, we're probably not going to be best in class. That was 15 and a half for you. Number 16, at the beginning of a speech, you don't need to say, I'm happy to be here. Why? Well, for two reasons. One, it's likely every other speaker that day said the same thing. I'm happy to be there. And number two, what's the alternative? That you're really pissed off that you're there? Of course you're happy to be there. So just show them in your work. You need not telegraph it or explain it or indicate it. If that's just filler, that's unnecessary. Now, if you're being interviewed, you're on the radio and something like this, it's a little bit different. They say, oh, I'm so happy to have you here. And then, if you just say thanks, it seems a little bit stilted. So you might say, thank you. I'm really excited to be here. That's okay. But when it's a speech, it just feels different. Watch it. When you see people do it now, you'll see it's not necessary. So it's not going to destroy a speech. Doesn't mean you're going to bomb. Great speakers will do that from time to time, I'm sure. However, you don't need it. So there are a lot of things out there that you see people do that you just don't need to do. So you can cut. Number 17, when you tell a story, you can avoid doing the following things. Number one, you don't need to ask them if you can tell them a story, because God forbid, what if somebody says, no, I'd rather you not. Could you talk again about that other thing? Then you're like, well, no, I was going to tell the story. Now you're in a weird situation. It's also weak to ask, can I tell you the story? Now, remember my rule, there may be times when it actually works better to do that, and that's a choice. But we need to use it as a choice as opposed to a habit or just a tick of saying, hey, can I tell you a story? And then secondly, we don't need to say, I'm going to tell you a story. Well, let me tell you a story. There was an old man, because remember, we want people to be surprised that they're hearing a story once they're into it. Because if we say, I'm going to tell you a story, a lot of times what they'll do is they'll sit back and they'll go, all right, what do you got? Come on, speaker, bring it. It's just what happens. So you can avoid doing that. Number 18. I put 18, and I'm going to emphasize it now, even though I've been sliding it into the entire theme today, because it really is the through line of our work. There isn't one way to do anything. And I don't want you ever to feel constrained. That is very important. So number 18 is every rule was meant to be broken, because the performer's job is in part to break the rules. Not to break the rules just to break the rules, not to break the rules just to be different, but to break the rules to try to create something that's better, that maybe didn't even exist before. So they say, okay, everybody's supposed to walk up the steps to come on stage. Well, maybe you find another way to do it. One of my friends, Pat Flynn, he came on stage in a DeLorean and dressed up as Michael J. Fox. That's quite an entrance. That's not typical. I'm sure he had to work with the conference organizers to work that out, but they loved it, so they did it, and it was a great, big, splashy entrance. Number 19, it's important to connect the dots. So I just mentioned there's a through line, and the through line here is that there isn't one way to do anything. and that our rules are meant to be broken if we find a better way to do it. And that helps connect the dots going through our work. And even with these quick bits of these quick tips that I'm giving you, you see how they often relate to each other. So I'm trying to connect the dots as much as possible. So make sure when you are giving a speech, you connect the dots. All your concepts fit together very well. Number 20, don't push. Sometimes when you're nervous and you have an audience and you feel like their energy is a little low, you come out and push really hard, like, what's up, guys? How you doing? Can I get a, hey, can I get a, what's up? And they go, what's up? You go, no, more, what's up? It goes back and forth. Most audiences really, truly don't love that. We hear that in a lot of the feedback we get from audiences about speakers, that they really would prefer that they weren't forced to do things. I want you to remember this. All audience interaction should be proportionate to the amount of trust that you've earned. Audience interaction should be proportionate to the amount of trust that you've earned. So in one of my keynotes called the Think Big Revolution, at the end of the keynote, I have dancers come on stage that I hire in the different cities that I'm in. I have them memorize a choreographed routine, and then the audience will do it with them. And it's really quite spectacular to watch thousands of people doing this routine, but I would never ask them to do it at the beginning because most of them are not going to want to do it. They're going to get up and dance this funny routine. No way. Who are you, dude? Well, I'm not doing this. But by the end, I've earned it. By the end, I can get them there. I've got enough trust built up for them to get up and go, yes, I'm going to do this. But if someone doesn't want to get up, I'm not going to force them to. So all audience interaction should be proportionate to the amount of trust that we've earned. So don't push an audience to do something that they really don't want to do, or to try to force them to come with a different energy level, or even just pump yourself up so that you seem over the top, just trying to get their energy up. It's not necessary. Number 21, never apologize for the time that you don't have. So let's say you were supposed to do 60 minutes, but someone ran overtime and things got screwed up and you only had 40 minutes. Well, of course, you cannot go over the time that was scheduled. You need to make up that time, and the organizers will love you for it. So you've only got 40 minutes. But if you come out and say, I'm supposed to have 60, I only have 40, I'll do the best I can. Already the audience is going, oh, I'm not getting what I should have gotten. I'm kind of getting gypped. That sucks. We don't want that. So never apologize for the time you have or don't have. Number 22, let them go early. It's different on a webinar or a live stream, although you could apply this to both, but it's most important to consider when it comes to being in a space with people. If you're speaking on a stage and there's a theater there or a table set up and people are in there, you don't want people getting up and down, of course. And most people won't just leave in the middle because they don't want to be rude. So they're stuck there. They're constrained. And even if they love everything you do, if you're just killing it, it's still a great opportunity for them if they have a few more minutes, because what if there's only 15 minutes between sessions? They got to call home, have a cup of coffee, use the loo, and maybe you can't do all that in 15 minutes. So an extra 5, they love it. They thank you for it. A little extra breathing room, even if they love everything you do. Never go over. Ever, ever, ever never go over time when you're in a live space and when other people are following you. If you're on a webinar, sometimes I'll do webinars where I'll say, listen, I'm going to schedule for 60 minutes. If you have additional questions, I'll stay over at the end. And if you need to go, you go. No problem. Because I can't see you. I don't know what you're doing right now. You could be, doing 6 other things right now and just have me on in the background. And if I decided I wanted to go a little bit longer, it's not going to hurt you. If you have to go do something else, you'll leave. But it could negatively impact the people in the room and certainly the conference organizers if you're speaking at a conference. So that's a no-no. That's the sign. That's the difference between a professional and an amateur when you're speaking live somewhere. Number 23, enlist the self-proclaimed experts. If you have a self-proclaimed expert in the room, enlist their help, get them on your side, and then move on. Because there are some people who love to share their expertise, whether or not it's their venue. So don't get defensive. Don't argue with them. Don't push back on them. Give them the floor for a little bit. Take it right back and then move on. Number 25. Oh, sorry. Number 24. Number 24. Embellishment is okay in your stories. Not lying. Lying is entirely different. But let's say you have two stories that are similar, and you're trying to figure out how to make a point to the audience, and you feel like if you conflate them, or if you change the day that something occurred or the time that it occurred to make the story more compelling, but everything that you tell them actually occurred, I think that's fine, because it's a theatrical event. Performing, public speaking, you're trying to do whatever you can to improve the experience for the audience. And those slight changes in stories, if they help the audience, give them a better experience. That's very different than saying something happened that didn't happen. From my perspective, this is always a choice, but I think that there's a difference. Number 25, remember that they don't know what you know. They do not know what you know. They do not know what you know. So if you go in there trying to prove to them that you're smart with this really high level stuff, you might go over their heads, even if they're incredibly intelligent people, just because they're not familiar with this particular work. So you always want to do your best to make sure that you're connecting with them where they are, not where you are, to show them how smart you are. Number 26, reward people for contributing. Have you ever been in a situation, an event, where the speaker asks the audience a question and is trying to elicit the answer from the audience, but you really know the speaker's looking for one particular thing and they just want to try to get people to say it? So let's just say I said, what's your favorite color? Or what's the best color? What's the best color? And one person raises their hand and says, blue. And they go, no. And then I say, next. What's your favorite? What's the best color? And someone says green. And I say, next. And then someone else goes, red? No. You know, I'm now putting people down for contributing when I ask them to contribute. But if I said, what's the best color? And you said blue, love blue. What about you? Green, love green. Green's fantastic, beautiful. What? And then da-da-da. Everybody gets rewarded for it. Don't patronize. And if you want to give people gifts for contributing, give it to them. You'll get more people to contribute. But make sure we don't shut people down when they contribute. Always reward them when they contribute. Number 27, if you care about something, make sure the audience knows why you care about it. Because it's not enough just to tell them that you care. They need to know why to connect with you personally. That's where the emotional connection comes in. I had a student in one of my master classes who got up on stage to give a speech about domestic violence in the military. And he was an officer in the Navy, and he was going to give this speech at the Naval Academy in Annapolis to midshipmen. But he wouldn't tell us why it was important to him. So it seemed like this kind of academic, disconnected talk. And he said, well, I feel like if I tell you what it is, then you're not going to respect me. Because clearly, now that he said that, we knew something in his past wouldn't shed a really positive light on his behavior in the past. But he can redeem himself by doing really good work and making a difference now. And then the audience will connect with him. It's like, you know, someone trying to lead an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, but has never had any problem with alcohol. It's a little disconnect, you know? It's hard. It's just like I want to go back to what we talked about earlier. If we connect the dots to the earlier concept of they need to know that you know what the world looks like for them. Well, in his case, most of the people in the audience were not behaving that way, but some of them may, and some of them may at some other point. But if they feel like they connect with him, they understand him, they appreciate his honesty around what he did, maybe they're more willing to now deal with theirs because they see that, okay, I can change. So why do you care about something is really important. use the rules of three. This is number 30. This is number 28. Boom, boom, bang. The rule of three applies to comedy. It applies to delivering big moments when you're standing and landing. The rule of three applies to rhetorical devices. You use three different words to highlight the same exact idea. But the rule of three is something you can use even in your head when you are landing a big point. So let's say I tell you the story, I'm building it, I'm building it, and I'm about to deliver the punchline. I wait, and then deliver. And sometimes I ask my students to actually do that in their head, because silence on stage is uncomfortable for many people. And you often think that the silence is much longer than it actually is. So you might have this much silence, but that may feel like 5 seconds to you because all eyes are on you. But in fact, it just went by in a blip. So sometimes you actually have to count it out to recognize that, wow, that was only 3 seconds. Number 29. Understand stage blocking. This is a big concept. This is something that we teach in all of our courses, something that we teach at Heroic Public Speaking Live. Blocking. Blocking is where you go on stage, when, how, and why. If you don't know where you're going to go on stage or what you're going to do on stage, and you've just worked on the content, then you end up wandering around. You don't know what to do with yourself when you're on the stage. But we need to paint a picture, a visual picture with our body. We need to create a kinesthetic relationship with them, with our body. We need to use movement, use the stage for transitions from one idea to another, one concept to another. So this is something that is done in the rehearsal process. And then, of course, you're able to adjust that blocking no matter what kind of space you're in when you're giving that particular presentation. And number 30, big moments, center stage, generally, not always. Sometimes they're in the audience, but often center stage. If you are upstage, which is back there, stage right? So house left, stage right. If you're way back up in the corner, you are hiding, essentially. You don't want to deliver a big moment back there. Or you don't want to deliver the moment all the way stage right, because then the audience stage left on the house right, they don't get much physical connection to you. Big moments often happen center stage and often center downstage. Not maybe all the way downstage, but closer forward than back. Now that's 30. As I said before, heroicpublicspeaking.com. There is an opt-in for a bunch of videos and the world-saving guide to heroic public speaking, something like that. And you can get another 20 tips, that will complement what we did here today, and you will love them. Now, I promised you I'd give you a link. So if you want to come to Heroic Public Speaking Live, you can come for a big discount. It's actually a $500 discount. It's just for you as Rob's student. Ready? heroicpublicspeaking.com/Rob, R-O-B. Easy to remember. heroicpublicspeaking.com/Rob. Now that is where you would sign up. However, all of the information for Heroic Public Speaking Live is at heroicpublicspeaking.com/live, L-I-V-E. That's where you learn all about the program, what we're doing, when we're doing it, who's going to be there. And then when you go by, you just go over to heroicpublicspeaking.com/Rob, R-O-B. I'm going to take a few questions. I promised I would leave about 10 minutes for questions. It is exactly 10 minutes. And I'm happy to do this. Okay. So there's so many people have said hi and thank you, and Bradley and Steve and Deborah and Richard and Laura. So I'm going to give you a little time to either do one of two things. Either put in a question that I can answer for you, or tell me something that you got from our work together today that was helpful, that was valuable, that was an aha moment, something that you might incorporate or change as a result. I'll give you a little bit. Sometimes on Google Hangouts, it takes a minute to show up. So I'll just give you a minute or two to do that. And while you do that, I'll have a drink. Not like a drink, just some water. Oh yeah, that's a bonus tip. Generally, don't drink before you're giving a speech. Have you ever been to a wedding where the speech just goes on and on and on and on and gets weirder and longer and more confusing? Often the alcohol is a contributing factor. So if you need to give a speech and you want to have like one little drink just to calm your nerves, okay. But Monte says, well done, Michael. Interesting. So much of this applies to singer entertainers too, of course. Absolutely. And anytime you're in front of people, everything that we introduced here, or I introduced here today, applies. What we do with Heroic Public Speaking Live that is unique is I've designed it so that it feels like a conservatory program. My partner, who's also my wife, she was my partner first, and then she was willing to marry me, which was really cool. She got her master's in fine arts in acting at Yale, at the Yale School of Drama. At the same time, I was at the graduate acting program at NYU doing my training. We were both trained in classical acting, Shakespeare, Chekhov, etc. And the first year of our training is a playful year. We do a lot of improvisation, a lot of games, a lot of creative work. The second year, they pretty much beat the crap out of you. So you don't know what you're doing. You feel like, I thought I was a great actor when I came in here. Thousands of people auditioned. They took 18. I was one of them. What the heck? Maybe they made a mistake. And then in the third year, you feel like you're put back together. It's a really great feeling because you've done all that work. The way that we design the program is similar, except we don't beat you up. We don't make you feel like you're lost. But you do see things that you might not have seen before. Sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And there may be holes in your performance that you don't even know were there. Some of the things you know you need to work on. Other things you don't even know yet. The first day, we bring in our teachers from grad school. So these are the people that only the top graduate acting students in the world get to work with, from Yale and NYU. Amy's voice teacher from Yale, my improvisation teacher from NYU, and the movement teacher from NYU. They're all coming. They're not the kind of people that you get typically at a conference for public speaking. And you're going to actually work with them on your voice, on your movement, on your speech, on your improvisation, on your feet the first day. There's only 1 hour of the day where you're actually sitting down the whole first day, which is really cool. You'll also get to see both Amy and I coach people on the stage. And you'll see what that process is like. And you'll see transformations that you might not think are real, but they are. Do you know who Jordan Harbinger is? If not, he is the host of The Art of Charm, which gets over 2 million downloads a month. It's a podcast. So he's a very experienced, very successful podcaster. Has been doing it since 2008. But he felt he didn't really know what to do on the stage. So he came to Heroic Public Speaking. And the first time he saw me deliver a masterclass where I put someone on stage, had them deliver their speech for about 5 minutes, and then worked with them. Coach them, had them work again, coach them, work again, coach, boom, boom, boom. He said he thought it was fake. He said, there's no way that someone could be this average and get that good in such a short period of time. That's got to be staged. They must have rehearsed it to look like that. And then he saw me do it again and again and again, and he realized it's not staged. And even Jordan came and worked with us in our graduate level program, our more immersive, longer term training programs. So you'll see things you've probably never seen before. And then the second day, we do content creation, storytelling, really working on your stories, sourcing your stories, crafting your stories, telling your stories. We do sessions in working on camera, improvisation in front of the camera, how to do interviews in front of the camera, really how to fall in love with the camera and make it fall in love with you. On the third day, we are doing business sessions. I bring in some of the top money-making speakers in the business. They will sit on panels, answer your questions about the business of speaking. Ron Tite is doing a session on humor, using humor in your speeches. He's a professional comedian and one of the top speakers in the business, and a lot more. So you'll learn more about that at heroicpublicspeaking.com. T. Paul Newstrom said, overall, I learned a lot today, mainly the importance about connecting emotionally with your audience and being good at helping them to see how change is important. Love the contrast of extremes point the best. Thank you, Paul. Joy said, hey, I just want to tell you that you rock and your coaching videos are simply awesome. That's fantastic. Thank you so much. Fantastic. Okay, I've got 4 minutes. I could take 1 or 2 more questions. That's about it. Or I could read just 1 or 2 more pieces of feedback from you here on the screen. Okay. And I have a hard and fast rule about all our work, and I hope you would take this and consider it and apply it to everything you do, because it doesn't just apply to our events. The very first thing I tell everybody who comes to one of our events is this. If you criticize somebody, if you put someone down, if you are mean, nasty, competitive, exclusionary, you're gone. You're out. No refund. You're gone. Because you need to be in a place that's safe. You need to feel comfortable, because you may have to take risks. You may do things you've never done before. You may share parts of yourself you haven't shared. You're not required to, certainly not at this event, but you have the opportunity to do if you want to. So you need to know that everybody there supports you. Everybody cares for you. Everybody is on your team, and I've got your back. I protect you when you're in my care. And I think when you're in a place where you want to be creative, you need that. Adam says, as a performer, likability is the most valuable tool. Absolutely, Adam. I'm with you 100%. And what's interesting about likability is that likability is not a constant. Not everybody resonates with everybody. So you get up one speaker that one room doesn't resonate with. You have that same speaker, another room likes them so much. And what we're doing is we're bringing out the best parts of ourselves and trying to reach the audience we're meant to serve. Not everybody, not anybody that has a pulse and a checkbook, right? Or can fog up a mirror, but the people we're meant to serve. And so if we tamp down on ourselves, if we pretend we're something other than we are, or try to behave in a way, that isn't authentic for us, then we actually reduce our likability. So we don't want to put aside who we are and our values just for the sake of what we think other people want. We want to reach the people we're meant to serve. Thank you, Adam. And T. Paul asks, and this will be my last question, are radio interviews and TV appearances a good place to start in starting to book speaking gigs? Absolutely. I mean, for me, it's not one or the other. If you can get radio gigs, book them. If you can get TV appearances, book them. Those will all add to your credibility. They may not sell a lot of, if you're on NPR, that might sell a lot of books, but I'm on TV a lot on the big network programs, and those don't move a lot of books when I come in for a 3-minute interview. But what they do is they add credibility. So in the bio, it can say, is a regular on CNBC, MSNBC, PBS, etc. And of course, that helps you book more gigs. So there are certain things in the business that give you more credibility. They don't necessarily sell more, but they help you get more credibility so that you have more opportunities and more doors open for you. Great. And then I'm going to close with what Adam said, because I really like it. He said, thank you, Michael. A button. If they like you, they will give you slack if you stumble along the way. Absolutely. Absolutely. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to be in service to you. I had a great time. If you ever need me, questions@michaelport.com. Questions@michaelport.com is a way to reach me. heroicpublicspeaking.com/Rob is how you get a discount. And heroicpublicspeaking.com is where you can get access to more free videos and more free tips. And then we can stay in touch with each other. And I constantly send out the podcast episodes, which are from Steal the Show, if you want to go check that out. I've got about 60 something episodes up there now. And a lot of them are really like hard-hitting, content-driven episodes, just me and the mic giving you, lesson after lesson after lesson. And some of them are interviews with some really neat people about performance in all aspects of life. T. Paul said, thank you. Love the presentation today. I appreciate it. You're very welcome. And I hope to see you guys soon. Bye for now.